So the title is Reasonable People Can Disagree, and I want to explore different ideas about race, power, and laughter. And just as a warning, this will include some video clips with language and content that some might find offensive. It's not my intention to offend, but I believe it's integral to what we're doing, so I think we should all be good. All right, so in order to do this, I want to start by talking about this guy, Joseph Boskin. Don't worry, this will get interesting. Joseph Boskin is a thinker. He used to teach at Boston University, and when he writes about laughter and race and power, what he emphasizes is how laughter can be a powerfully destructive force in perpetuating stereotypes. And so his point is that we should be very attentive to laughter and to laughter's power, right? So he'll say that, obviously he's talking about how stereotypes are very dangerous because they simplify the process of perceiving other people and things, right? That, ever since people have been talking about laughter, back to Plato and Hobbes, thinkers have noted the power of laughter in making one group assert its superiority over another group. And going along with that, the act of laughing at racist jokes can further perpetuate damning stereotypes. So he puts it this way. Much of this aggressive behavior, of course, is disguised by a smile, a beguiling physical gesture which makes aggressive humor even more dangerous and undermining. And so you see the little phrase that I sort of use. Laughter can be the velvet glove that covers the brass knuckles. Too often, people will use that when racist or sexist or homophobic laughter is used, people will try to dismiss it as just a joke or not a big deal. Boskin points out that it is a big deal exactly because people take it so lightly. But its power comes in the way that it perpetuates and inculcates stereotypes. Okay, so to get at this, we're going to watch a little clip. This clip is from a movie called Guess Who, which is a modern adaptation of the movie Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. In this scene, the main character is an African-American woman, and she has brought her boyfriend Simon home to meet her family. In this particular dinner scene, she's introducing Simon to her grandfather. But also there's quite a bit of tension here at the dinner table. So clearly at this dinner table there's sort of a power conflict. Simon's kind of asserting his place or role with his girlfriend, but the girlfriend's father is trying to sort of assert his role as the leader of this house. And so you can see this kind of power dynamic that goes on here at this table. So we're going to watch this clip and kind of take a peek at this. You saw Simon, played by Ashton Kutcher. I think he's pretty much dating every woman on the set there, and left another one. Anyhow, so you got it. And so he's there at the table. He's sort of confronted by the situation, and he sort of says that that sort of excuses the grandfather's rather racist comments to him by saying that his grandmother's also a little racist. And so then he tries to kind of work out of this, and he says that, some people are old and we can't just change their thinking, and so, you just got to stop it, right? So he said, my Uncle Dave, he told a joke, and I just said you shouldn't say that, right? And so then you saw in the clip how he was he's at this power situation where, is he going to be chicken or is he going to tell the joke? So understanding, again, the power dynamics, very much the father at the head of the table, Simon, the boyfriend, on the table. Who's going to back down? And one of the things about this is that laughter and telling jokes are also about power. The person who tells the jokes and who can make the jokes can make people laugh. Jerry Seinfeld, when he talks about why he loves to do comedy, he says he loves to do it because he can stand on a stage and control 100, 200, 300, 500 people. He can make them laugh and he can make them stop. That feeling of power that he gets in front of an audience, right? So here in this clip, who tells jokes, who gets to tell them, who has power by telling these jokes, right? So So let's take a peek here at these jokes. Note how the jokes, Simon tells 5 jokes at the table, okay? The first one is a simple play on words, right? 100 black men buried up to their necks, and then which, by the way, sounds, it makes you tense, right? I mean, this violent scene, these people sort of buried in this potentially deadly setting. I mean, you see the look on the people at the table that this is tense. But the punchline is AfroTurf, right? Nothing bad about that, nothing particularly racist. It's a play on words, right? So, okay, this works just fine at the table, right? Second joke. This one's the one, again, it has a dangerous setup, right? 300 men chasing one black man. Again, it sounds like escaped slaves or something. And again, you see these reaction shots. But when the punchline turns out to be Tiger Woods, it resolves itself as perhaps somewhat flattering, right? This isn't playing on negative stereotypes. As a matter of fact, it's talking about, this man who these great achievements mean that all these people are chasing after him because they don't match up to his skills and abilities, right? Okay, so you saw Simon, he's at the table, told a couple jokes, this is working out. The father keeps egging him on, right? And remember, he says, I don't know any more racist jokes. And then he just rattles them off. Did you see this? And part of what I believe is going on here is that the father wants him to screw up, right? Because once he screws up, then the father can have power over him by saying, this guy's a little racist, right? And so he's baiting him. He's getting him to tell more and more of these jokes. This third joke, again, this is the one about Adam and Eve. And it seems somewhat complimentary of a black man's appetite, right? Can't take a rib away. Again, nothing playing on a particularly negative stereotype. This is going all right. Fourth joke, right? This is the one about the hoedown, another play on words, right? Nothing particularly offensive about this. And you see that Simon is getting comfortable until he tells clearly the wrong joke, right? This fifth joke. Which is the one that, with stunned silence, plays on these racist stereotypes. This joke is duly met with science, as laughter would be something like the aggressive behavior Boskin describes. To laugh at this joke is to consent, is to at least affirm that you understand these stereotypes. That has to be there. You have to at least be able to understand what's being talked about to laugh at those jokes. So here again, this laughter becomes the velvet glove that covers the brass knuckles. This otherwise very acceptable, almost delightful way of passing on knowledge or sharing common experience that shares a common experience that's negative and ugly and terrible. So Boskin brings all these things to the fore. He brings this out, that this is the terrible dangers tied up with laughter, and the ways that laughter and power can come together, especially in this example that we're talking about, to reinforce and to perpetuate these racist stereotypes. Okay, so here's our first one, and we're going to do 3 of these. We always have to do stuff in 3s. One last thing I want to say about this. You remember when he's at the table, and he's, 2 more things. Remember when he's at the table and he said that his Uncle Dave had said something really racist, and he said we shouldn't say things like that, right? And then they say, well, tell the joke, right? I don't think that the first joke he told is what Dave had said at the table, the AfroTurf joke, because it's just sort of a play on words, right? There's nothing, I mean, someone says this, they could say lots of jokes that play on ideas, but aren't particularly offensive or based on particularly negative stereotypes, right? Dave's joke was probably that last joke. So the speaker, Simon, knows enough to not tell something blatantly ugly right off the bat. But clearly, as things go on, he does. Okay, and one last thing. What about the joke that associates the sister and the whore? You notice that there's no problems with that in this setting, right? Again, it's sort of a play on words, but that doesn't get any play at the table. And the reason for that is because this is a much more of a male-dominated setting, right? It's the men fighting over who has power here, right? And so a joke that sort of associates the sister with a prostitute, that's no big deal, plus it's just a play on words, that doesn't That doesn't register, right, in this setting. Okay? All right. Talked about this entire scene about power. Now I want to talk about another thinker, Roland de Souza. De Souza talks also about race and laughter and power. But de Souza's thinking about this is that, yes, race can be part of laughter, and it can be dangerous, and laughter and humor can perpetuate all these negative stereotypes. But de Souza's going to talk about how there's a little bit more going on here. There might be times when certain jokes are appropriate for certain groups and certain jokes aren't. So de Souza talks about alienation versus identification. Okay? So those who are part of a group or those who identify the group may genuinely claim to have the right to laugh by virtue of shared experience or community at some things and not others. So let me give you an example of this. Perhaps y'all are in a family where you make fun of certain members of your family. We never do this, do we? No. In the Tucker household, if you're not teased, you're not loved, right? So everyone's perpetually teased. But maybe you've had the experience where there are certain ways that you might tease or make fun of family members that wouldn't be permissible by people outside of your family, right? Those are okay when you're sort of in the family, but maybe certain jokes shouldn't be made. As a matter of fact, one of the things that you might want to think about is, at what point can a new member of the family, right, somebody who's maybe married in or something like that, at what point can that person make those family jokes? When are they an insider, right? When can they identify enough with the group? Maybe at the beginning they shouldn't even laugh at them, right? Oh, I think you're being mean about your sister, right? But then later on, she's going to be saying, well, it's good her parole officer's not here. There's stuff like that, like what we always say about siblings. So even we see this even in our own experience, right? Identification versus alienation. And identification is this idea of laughing with. Alienation is laughing at. Alienation is what creates a barrier between us and them, right? That sort of laughter, that sort of humor. Identification is laughter that happens within the family, within people of shared experience, where because of this shared experience, they can identify with one another, right? So from your own experience, you can see this. In this respect, some prominent blacks have said that Chris Rock's humor, which often has very strong racist expressions, is permissible when it is within the family or within the community, right? So here's de Souza's source, by the way. And then there's this, the role of black comedy in supporting stereotypes of black intellectual inferiority. And this is actually a discussion about this idea in the Journal of Blacks in Higher Education. So one of the things that we can do with de Souza's ideas is we can kind of go back to to the clip in our minds. I won't show it again. But when you think about the clip via the ideas of de Souza, one of the things that you see is that after the first 4 jokes, Simon seems to have set everyone else at ease. Perhaps he feels like he's part of the family, like he can identify with them, right? They're laughing with him. We're all laughing about these sorts of things. It's almost as if he has the illusion that he can identify enough that he can make any joke, right? And that they're going to know, oh, I don't mean this in a racist way. I'm just playing with these ideas. Clearly, what we see in the clip is that that's not the case, right? That they don't accept him as enough in the family to make that kind of a joke, right? When he tells his final joke, it's clear that such is not the case. The silent scream through jokes marks his alienation, right? He is just not in the group enough to be able to make a joke like that. But this view, this idea about alienation identification, raises some difficult questions. Who determines who is in and who is out? Who gets to make that determination? Who can tell these jokes and when and how, right? Even within one's own family, some members of the family might think that that joke was said too early by that person, right? Others might be like, man, I'm glad you're finally part of the family by saying things like that, right? Because before you always just seemed so aloof because you wouldn't participate with us in our jokes and in our humor, right? But again, how do you negotiate that? How do you know if that's the case? What are the criteria, right? It's not like a sign goes up over your head, oh, okay, he can say these things now, right? Also, how does this not end up setting a double standard, where one group can say and express what another group cannot, how does this not perpetuate inequality and dangerous ambiguity, right? If we allow for certain types of humor and amongst some people, right? This, in fact, seems to be the case in the clip. Simon seems to believe that he's an insider after his fourth successful joke, but when he tells the fifth, those at the table take offense. He's caught in this, in this dilemma, this ambiguity, right? Why did this not work? Why? But there's no way. There's no way that he could have anticipated beforehand. And so having this sort of ambiguous situation is just inherent in what's going on. Okay, third guy, Mikhail Bakhtin. Bakhtin was a early 20th century thinker. He worked in the Soviet Union. He talked about, one of the things that he specialized in was studying the medieval carnival and what the carnival was like and what were the qualities of this place. And as he studied the medieval carnival, he studies what the laughter was like at these sorts of places. For Bakhtin, the medieval world is divided between like the official world and then the sort of like carnival world. And for him, the carnival occurred more often than it does nowadays. And it was a special place. Like, it was a place where people really stepped outside of the normal world and everything would be turned upside down, right? So if you saw the movie Hunchback of Notre Dame, the Disney movie, right? It shows the carnival and uses this song Topsy-Turvy, right? Where everything is sort of turned upside down. So, so he describes what laughter is like at the carnival. He says this: it is, first of all, a festive laughter. Carnival laughter is the laughter of all the people. Second, it is universal in its scope. It is directed at all and everyone, including the carnival's participants. The entire world is seen in its droll aspect, in its gay relativity. Third, this laughter is ambivalent. It is gay, triumphant, at the same time mocking, deriding. It asserts and denies, it buries and revives. Such is the laughter of carnival. So for Bakhtin, there's the official world that we live in, where you live by certain standards of dress and activity. And for him, the feudal world was even more strictly structured than our world, right? You have your role, you do your thing, and all these other sorts of things. At carnival, all this could be changed, right? You could dress as somebody else, you could wear masks, and everybody was laughing at everyone, right? So, so I gave some examples. Modern versions of this, I don't know if you're familiar with the Burning Man festival. Right? This is a place where people just go off, separate from the world, invent things, create things, and just everything is sort of fair game, right? Woodstock, Festivus. All right, you know what this is? Never mind. It's just this crazy party here at Elon. One year it was on a Saturday. It was a Saturday that my kids had to go to school at the elementary school. So I pick them up from the carpool and we're driving through the university and they're like, "Why are all those kids covered in mud, Dad?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't know." They're just crazy college kids. All of these are sort of this, it's a world that's separate from the world that we're normally in. It's this carnival-like world. Okay, so one of the things to think about is this. Going back to this clip. Could the movie theater or the comedy club also be such a place? When you go into a theater, is this a place where you can in some ways set aside the normal standards of everyday behavior? You can go to places where you normally wouldn't go. You can see things that you normally wouldn't see, and you're allowed to question and play with things that don't normally happen, right? The movie theater could be this way, the comedy club could be this way. Could this be a place where we expect jokes that engage potentially difficult or dangerous or troubling material in a comedic way? To take them from the normal world, bring them into this ideal place where we can play with them, turn them upside down, fool around with them, and within the confines of this secure space of this utopia, right? And actually, could this be a place where, because we have this sort of safe place to play with things, we get into this safe, where it doesn't have these same long-term consequences because of the expectations of the place itself, that perhaps we could rethink it, right? And perhaps it could have positive real-world consequences when you go back to the real world, the official world. Okay? And could it be that in art and other expressions where we are invited to laugh at racism, that the experience reveals racism's absurdity and invites us to live and act differently when we're back in the normal world? In this respect, to not laugh is to keep out or away or above the communal experience. In the theater or comedy club, of laughing with others about racism. Again, you go into a comedy club, you know that potentially racist, homophobic, sexist things will be said. You come in knowing that that's the case, right? But you also come in knowing that no one's probably going to actively attack someone. That this person who's a comedian is actually going to take these difficult, painful, weird things and play with them. And perhaps in the act of playing with them, show their absurdity, right? So the jokes are very much permissible, if not useful, in this setting. And to go to this place and then to not laugh is to invite this sort of aloofness that damages the utopian ideal, right? You ever been to a movie that with someone and it's just way uncomfortable, right? Oh, glad my mom's here for this, right? Right? Because they're not going to engage it the same way. If you go to a comedy club and someone's like, I think that's just really offensive, that's going to change your experience of being there, right? This is a world that's structured in a certain way where this is part of it. And according to Bakhtin's thinking, this is part of the utopian ideal of such a place. Okay, so I want to show 2 more clips. So a couple things about this. And frankly, the point of this, as you'll see here, is that there's lots of different ways to respond to that clip, right? You may have found it offensive. You may have found it, using Boskin's ideas, is this just the velvet glove of laughter that covers the brass knuckles of racism? Is it just perpetuating this, right? One of the things about this is that when he talks about grape drink versus grape juice, right? In some ways, this might seem to be about race, but in other ways, it might just be about class, not about race, right? And so what he passes off as race is really about class, and by passing it off as race, for him it might seem permissible, right? But he's not of the same class necessarily of the people that he might be making fun of, right? And so there again, he says, oh, I can joke about this because I'm in this group, but maybe he's not. And maybe these jokes that we're invited to participate in, there's still, to use De Sosa's language, a certain amount of alienation about this, right? That might pass itself off as, no, we're all good, we're all in the family about this, when that's not really the case, right? The other thing is, obviously this place is really full, so you people laughed really hard, and y'all not as much, right? This lecture's a lot easier when you've had acid or something beforehand, because this group is just falling apart over here, okay? So, but one of the things to think about is, did you laugh? Would you laugh? Why? Why not? What would be the things that might get in the way of that, right? Here's another thing. Who's speaking in these clips, right? What difference does that make? And we'll see one more other clip in a second. Does this person invite you to identify and thereby laugh? Are you as an audience invited to share in the laughter, right? Do you feel permitted to laugh because in a certain way you're sort of like in the place and so you're in the family? I'm making these jokes, I expect you to laugh. This is all permissible, right? Could it be that you only think that you are laughing with when really you're being laughed at? And then the next thing, who is the audience and where are the jokes told? Can you see how this is in a comedy club? And it's sort of utopian. It's sort of this ideal place where we can kind of say anything, right? He clearly has a lot of gratuitous foul language that you wouldn't use in certain places, but which doesn't register as particularly bad given its setting. It suits the speaker and his style, his delivery, and what you would expect from this place, right? So that doesn't register as offensive and strangely sort of appropriate, right? So if you went here and you were sort of too stuffy to laugh at it, it's almost like you're not willing to join the group, to join this communal experience of laughter, right? Like this aloofness sets you apart from that, okay? And this is, again, why it is that reasonable people can disagree. So we'll do one more clip, is my thing. Okay, so that's this last clip. And again, these same sort of things. Do you find it offensive? What stereotypes might it perpetuate? Does it depend on who's in and who's out? Who negotiates those boundaries? What does that mean? And again, is it told because of the audience? Is it kind of this utopian ideal where we can play with racism and racist ideas in ways to flip them and reverse them and perhaps show their absurdity and perhaps change the way that we think? Luckily, I don't have to care how you come down because, I get my $5 an hour anyhow. And what's nice about this is that in the end, reasonable people can disagree. Thanks.